Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Michelle, economy student in Vestfold, and I'm one of the volunteers of Newbie in Norway under the Filipinske Hjelpesamfunn i Norge, the Filipino Helping Society in Norway, or FHS. Today, we're going to discuss about the personal taxes in Norway. So get your pen and paper in case you need to jot down some information. And you can also replay this video on our YouTube channel. Just search for the Filipino Helping Society in Norway. And also, don't forget to like and share this informational video to your friends. But before we start, I would like you to know, guys, that FHS is an NGO who helps with information drive to benefit the migrant groups in Norway. We are not from Skatteetaten, and we are here to present general information published by Skatteetaten on their website. Information may or may not apply to your situation, thus discretion is necessary. Under no circumstances will our organization be held responsible nor liable in any way for any claims or liabilities resulting or arising directly or indirectly from your use of the information we are about to present. Today is 30th of April, the last day of the month, and together with me are Christine and Kate, my fellow FHS volunteers. And now let us hear a short introduction from Christine.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for that wonderful introduction. Hello to all our viewers and welcome to our live stream. Let us know which commune you are living in Norway and just comment down below. I am Maria Christine Clerigo Grigord. I am living in Norway also. I am 24 years old and married. I am a proud volunteer and a scholar of the Filipinske Hjelpesamfunn i Norge, or FHS. So as Mitch mentioned, we will discuss about personal taxes of employees in Norway. So first, we must know about Skatteetaten. What is Skatteetaten is? Skatteetaten, or the Norwegian Tax Administration, is an agency under the authority of the Ministry of Finance. The activities of the Norwegian Tax Administration lay the principal financial foundations for government operations. The Norwegian Tax Administration shall ensure that taxes and other claims are correctly assessed and paid, and that the Folkeregisteret or National Registry is up to date. Yes, Kate?
Yes, that is right, Christine. By the way, my name is Kate. I'm also a proud volunteer of the Philippinske Hjelpesamfunn her i Norge, or FHS, and I'm student, 25 years old, currently living here in Oslo. And yeah, now I will be talking about what is the role of Skatteetaten. The main duties of the Norwegian Tax Administration are collection of advance tax, checking of the basis underpinning the returns filed by taxpayers and third parties. It is also assessment and checking of employees' social security contributions and net wealth tax. Also, assessment and collection of value-added tax and excise duties, checking and supervision the collection of direct taxes and employers' social security contributions by municipal tax collectors, and it's also as management of the National Registry. And as an employee in Norway, we have an obligation to pay our taxes. In this DigiSeminar, you will know more about important things in terms of your personal taxes. And here's Mitch.
Thank you, Kate, for giving us the explanation about the meaning of SCOT. In addition to this, I would like to add that when you are working, you need a Skattekort or a tax deduction card or a free court or exemption card. A Skattekort or a tax deduction card shows how much tax your employer must deduct before they pay your salary. If you do not have a tax deduction card, your employer must deduct 50% of your income. For January, the employer can use the same tax deduction card for the preceding year. Your employer pays the deducted tax to the tax authorities on your behalf. Every year in December, you'll receive a tax deduction notice. It's important to check that the basis for the tax deduction card is correct. It specifies the income, expenses, wealth, and debt as kataitatan things you'll have in the coming year. You'll find the notice in your Alt-in account. If you're not an online user, the tax deduction notice will be sent to your registered address. Next slide, please. And we also have the free court. So what is a free court? A free court or an exemption card is a tax deduction card that shows that your employer does not need to deduct tax. You can order an exemption card if you earn 60,000 Norwegian crowns or less during the year. This amount includes all taxable salary, sickness benefits, and holiday pay. Both holiday pay or feriepenge you earned last year and that will be paid this year, as well as holiday pay you receive if you leave your job this year. These are all included in the computation for the exemption card amounting of 60,000 Norwegian crowns. You can also order or view or change a tax deduction card as well as order an exemption card at skateetaten.no. And here's Christine to discuss about the tax deduction for foreigners.
All right, thank you, Miss Mitch. So let's go now to tax deduction for foreign workers. So as you all know, most foreign workers who are new in Norway will automatically become part of a voluntary tax scheme called pay or pay as you earn. When they apply for a tax deduction card, if they have short work stays in Norway or if it's their first year living in Norway, under the scheme, you're taxed at a fixed percentage, which is 25%, that your employer deducts from your salary. Next page, please. In addition to this, there is an income limit of 651,250 Norwegian crowns for year 2021. The scheme also applies to most foreign workers, which they become tax residents in Norway. You can opt out of the pay scheme and pay tax under the general tax rules if that's more profitable for you. You can opt out when you apply for a tax deduction card or later in the income year by changing your tax deduction card. If your employer applies for a tax deduction card for you, he or she cannot opt out of the pay scheme in your behalf. You can opt out in writing during your appointment for ID control. For further explanation, here's Ms. Kate to discuss the difference between general taxation and rules and pays scheme.
Yes, thank you, Miss Christine, for explaining us about what pay scheme is. So, what is the difference between general taxation rules and pay scheme? So, here's first general tax. So, general tax in Norway is calculated according to a tax rate that varies based on how much you earn during this year or the year. The tax rate is adjusted according to your income and deductions. If you earn less, you pay less tax. And if you earn more, you pay more tax. In addition, if you pay tax under the general rules, you'll get a tax return the year after you've worked. The tax return is, amongst other things, a summary of your income. In your tax return, you can claim deductions for expenses you've had in connection with your work in Norway. After you've received your tax return, you'll receive a tax assessment notice. The tax assessment notice will show whether you've paid too much or too little tax. If you paid too little tax, you must pay what you owe. And if you paid too much tax, you'll receive a refund into your bank account. So that is general taxation rules. And if you're in the pay scheme or pay as you earn scheme, you're taxed at a fixed percentage every month, no matter how much or little you earn. You do not submit a tax return, nor do you receive a tax assessment notice. Instead, you'll receive a receipt for pay tax in June, which shows how much salary and tax your employer has reported to the tax administration for the work you did last year. In Norway, if you have paid our taxes, you can also get your tax return depends on how you earn or declare. So here's Mitch to discuss about tax return.
That's right, Kate. I think this is the most talked about topic for many people in Norway when it comes to tax. So, in March to April every year, everyone who receives a salary, pension, or disability benefits receives a tax return. It represents a summary of your income, deductions, wealth, and debt. Again, to make sure you do not pay too much tax, you must check that the information the tax return is correct, and you can log into skatteetaten.no to check, amend, and submit your tax return. And next slide, please. The deadline for submitting the tax return is April 30, but you can apply for the extension of deadline at the website. If you receive the tax return on paper, you must check that everything is correct. Make the necessary changes and submit it on paper. You can also log in and submit it electronically even if you receive yours on paper. You do not have to submit the tax return if there are no changes to be made. If you believe that any pre-filled amounts are wrong, you should correct them by putting a line through the amount and entering the correct amount in the column called corrected to. You must enter the deductions, income, capital or wealth, and debts that have not been pre-filled yourself under the item called any amounts that have been pre-filled must be entered here. You must then state that which item the amount belongs to. You must enter deduction and that amounts that are new or have changed with the minus prefix, for example, minus 100. Income and wealth amounts must be entered without the prefix, for example, 100, and send it to Skatteetaten SL, Postbox 430, Alnabru 0614, Oslo. And now here's Christine to discuss about tax deductions.
Thank you, Mitch, for the explanation. So it is really important also to know what deductions one is entitled to declare in their skattemelding. The following are some of the common deductions that one is entitled to. So first, health and family. Under of it is child care deduction for those who have children aged 11 or under. It also applies if you have expenses related to the care of children aged 12 or over who have special care needs. Next, special allowance for single providers. It applies to people who care for one or more children under 18 years of age and who are unmarried, divorced, separated, or a widow, widower, and who do not live with a spouse equivalent partner on a permanent basis. You will be entitled to the special allowance if NAV considers you to be a genuine single provider and you will receive extended child benefit from NAV. Please take note that you can no longer claim a deduction for regular contributions. The maintenance payments. These are payments that you are obliged to make by law. So here's Kate to continue.
Thank you, Christine. And as I continue, work and education still under tax deduction, and transport between home and work. If return distance from home and work is more than 65 kilometers. It also applies for road tolls and or travel by ferry, which collectively exceeds 3,300 Norwegian crowns per year. Second, commuter, wage earner that spends the night away from home because of work. Still, member of a trade union. If you're a member of a trade union, you may be entitled to a deduction for your trade union fees up to a maximum amount of 3,850 Norwegian crowns per year. For example, move because of a new job. Relocation expenses is deductible if you accepted the job offer before you relocated. If you studied last year, generally you are not entitled to a deduction for your education expenses except if you use it to maintain your education and or keep up to date with developments to earn an income. If you are an employee, The deduction entitlement is also subject to the condition that you are in employment to which your education is relevant. Example, maintaining a pilot's license if you work as a pilot. Here's Mitch for any additional.
Yeah. In addition to work in education regarding tax deductions, if one is defended doctoral thesis, so any expenses in connection with printing, traveling, and any PhD dinners are deductibles. If working as a fisherman, anyone who has participated in fishing or hunting at the sea or along the coast for at least 130 days during the income year, or if you're working as a seafarer, anyone whose main employment was on board a ship in service and who worked on board for a total of at least 130 days during the income year is entitled to a deduction. So if you're also a foreign seafarers and offshore workers. So foreign seafarers and offshore workers can still claim the standard deduction for foreign employees. And addition to that, also extended deduction entitlement for person from the European Union or European Economic Area with limited tax liability. So these people that uh, living in this country or in this area who's currently working in Norway, you can ask to be taxed as if you were a resident for tax purposes. The condition is that at least 90% of your income from employment, pension, disability benefits, or commercial activity is taxed in Norway. So here's Christine to continue.
Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. The third in the tax deduction is the housing and property. So under of it is housing in a housing cooperative or jointly owned property. If you have expenses in connection with your shares in housing cooperatives and or jointly owned property, you can get a deduction for this. The expenses may concern the cooperative's jointly owned properties, interest expenses, and other expenses which are to be split between those who own shares. Next will be let housing or holiday property. If you pay tax on your rental income, you can claim a deduction for costs linked to the rental property. Example are costs for maintenance, municipal taxes, and insurance. And the third will be sold housing or holiday property at a loss. The general rule is that you will be entitled to a deduction for your losses if any profit you had made would have been taxable. The period of ownership and period of occupancy determine whether or not it will be taxable. Yes, Kate?
Thank you, Miss Christine. Next slide, please. Still under tax deduction is banks and loans. First, loans. You can claim deductions for what you've paid in interest on debt, penalty interest, and or the benefit of low interest loans from an employer. It also refinanced loans during the past year. You can claim deductions for expenses associated with the taking out of loans, including establishment fees, financing expenses in connection with the conversion of loans to obtain lower interest rates, including expenses for a valuer. Next, Young People's Housing Savings Account. BSU is a home saving scheme for people under the age of 34. You can save up to 25,000 Norwegian crowns per year, and you can also deduct 5,000 Norwegian crowns per year from your tax. The total savings amount is 300,000 Norwegian crowns. Still, sold shares or securities at a loss. And here's Mitch to continue.
Thank you, Kate. So deductions relating to gifts and donations. Donations to voluntary organizations. If you've donated at least 500 Norwegian crowns to voluntary organizations and or religious and belief-based community, you may get a deduction. The organization you made the donation to must report it to the Norwegian Tax Administration. And those are the coverage of tax deductions in Norway. Again, if you have any inquiries regarding your tax, you can always visit and check the SCAT website, scat.etaten.no. So let's proceed with another topic. Here's Miss Christine to tackle more about tax refund or underpaid tax.
Thank you, Ms. Mitch. So in the tax return, you will find a provisional tax calculation. This may be changed after you have submitted. When you have submitted your tax return, Skatitaten will go through all the information. You'll see whether you have to pay more tax or if you are entitled to a refund in your tax assessment. So here's Kate to explain furthermore about tax assessment.
Thank you, Miss Christine. Yes, after the tax refund or underpaid tax explained, so here's now tax assessment to be explained, or what we so-called skate oppure. After your tax return is submitted, the tax office will process it. When we have finished processing your tax return, you will get a tax assessment. The time this takes can vary. If your tax assessment indicates that you get a tax refund or pengertilgua, this means that you have paid too much tax and will receive a refund. Take note that amounts under 100 Norwegian kroner will not be refunded. If you ended up with underpaid tax or restskatt, then you paid too little tax last year and now owe money. You do not have to pay underpaid tax of less than 100 Norwegian crowns. If you get your tax assessment in April to June, your deadline is 20th August. If you receive the tax assessment after June, you must pay the money you owe within 3 weeks of receiving your tax assessment. And here's Mitch to continue explaining.
Further to the tax assessment, by the way, thanks for that, Kate. Further to the tax assessment, if you have to pay more than 1,000 Norwegian crowns in underpaid tax, the amount will be split into 2 installments. The deadline for payment depends on when you receive your tax assessment notice. So if you receive your your assessment notice on 24th of June or earlier, the deadline will be on 20th of August for the first installment and 24th of September for the second. If you receive your notice on or after 19th of August, the deadline for the first installment will be 3 weeks after the date on which your tax assessment was ready and 8 weeks after your tax assessment was ready for the second installment. Next slide, please. If you have underpaid tax or less than 1,000 Norwegian crowns, the deadline for payment will depend on when you receive your tax assessment notice. So for example, if you receive your tax assessment notice on 24th of June or earlier, the deadline for payment will be 20th of August. But if you receive your assessment notice on or after 19th of August, the deadline for payment will be 3 weeks after the date on which your tax assessment was ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Next is
I would also
Christine.
like to add that if your payment deadline falls on Saturday or Sunday, you can pay on the Monday. That's the first working day after the deadline. You must pay the underpaid tax even if you have made changes after the deadline for submitting the tax return or an appeal. If you do not pay the outstanding tax on time, interest will accrue on the overdue amount until you pay the amount in full. If you pay for your underpaid tax by 31st of May, you do not have to pay interest on the money you owe. Yes, Kate?
Yes, thank you, Christine. Next slide, please. Yes, next slide again, please. Thank you. And here's now to explain how to avoid underpaid tax. Can you go back, please? How to avoid IAS. Thank you. The reason why you end up with underpaid tax is often that the final figures for income and deductions differ from the amounts that were used as a basis for your tax deduction card. You must always check that first, the basis for your tax deduction is based on the correct information about your income and deductions. Second, the tax return you submit or submitted corresponds with the tax assessment notice you've received. And here's Mitch to continue.
Yeah, next slide, please. So if you have underpaid tax, you should compare the information in the tax deduction card with tax return for the year and see whether they match. The following are the changes that may affect your tax. For example, you have paid less interest on your loans or interest rates fall significantly, incorrect allocation of mortgage, personal circumstances have changed, like less travel to work, child has left preschool, no longer single, or no longer single provider, I should say, or you have retired, and so on and so forth. Also, if you have several employers and a wrong tax deduction has been made, ensure that your employers, including NAV, are using the correct section of the tax deduction card. Your main employer can use the table-based deductions, while secondary employers must use percentage deductions. Christine will continue.
Yeah, next slide, please. All right, this is the changes also that may affect your tax. So next is you have switched from being an employee to being a pensioner. You need to make sure that expenses you had while working and which stopped when you are retired are not included in your tax return. This may include trade union fees and pension contributions from your employers. And also, your income is higher than stated in the percentage-based deduction card. This only applies if you have percentage-based deductions. Most employees have table-based deductions, which means that changes in income are essentially irrelevant in terms of underpayment or overpayment of tax. Next is the information in the tax return does not correspond. If your bank has incorrectly reported your assets and liabilities to the Norwegian tax administration, your employer has incorrectly reported your income. The kindergarten has forgotten to submit details of your expenses and so forth. And the basis for tax deduction will be taxed incorrectly and end up with underpaid tax. These details must be checked in your tax return, and any changes must be registered by 30th of April. Next page, please.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Since we're now in a challenging time, there are a package of measures in connection with the coronavirus situation. The government will introduce a package of measures to handle the economic consequences of the coronavirus outbreak. This means changes to rates, duties, rules, penalties, and deadlines. The tax administration is reducing sanctions, enforcement fine, and moderating the application of the rules. The information will be updated continuously by Mitch.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Taxation of employees. So the tax administration has clarified the tax-related handling of circumstances that arise because of the coronavirus crisis. So first, tax exemption for necessary payments in kind received as a result of the coronavirus situation. This is, for example, home office equipment, telephone and internet services, and healthcare financed by the employer are tax-free and should not be reported. The tax exemption is granted provided the benefit is temporary, proportional, and based on the need to maintain operations and prevent spreading the virus. You should not deduct on these benefits, and you do not have to report them nor pay employers' national insurance contributions for them.
Next page slide, please. Okay, we'll go now to the use of company cars while laid off, tax liability, withholding tax, and duty to report. A company or car may, due to the coronavirus situation, be parked at the employee's home while the employee is laid off without the employee being taxed for the benefit of using the car. If the laid off employee uses the car for private purposes, regardless of the extent, the benefit must be calculated and reported as normal. The employer must notify the tax administration if there are no cash funds, which withholding tax can be deducted. Tax-free benefit when buying shares and etc. in the employer's company. The amount is increased from 3,000 to 5,000 Norwegian crowns. Next will be the commuter status. The requirement for number of visits for single commuters during the coronavirus situation. So usually, single commuters are required to travel home every third week to maintain their commuter status. So if, as an effort to prevent spreading the virus, a home visit is not carried out every third week, the commuter will still be considered as a commuter. He or she will then considered He or she will then potentially be eligible for deductions or expense allowances pursuant to the ordinary rules. Yes, Kate.
Yes, thank you, Christine and Mitch. Yes, there you have it. The package measures in connection with the coronavirus situation. I hope a lot of you guys are now more informed about personal taxes of employees here in Norway. Again, I would like to clarify, we are not from Skatteetaten. We just presented general information published by Skatteetaten on their website. Information may or may not apply to your situation. Discretion is necessary. Under no circumstances will our organization be held responsible or liable in any way for any claims or liabilities resulting or arising directly or indirectly from your use of the information. Christine?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. If you have further questions about your own personal taxes, you can contact Scotty Tatton from at 800-800-000 from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. on weekdays. And on April 30, exactly today, opening hours are extended from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can also ask them through their Facebook page, www.facebook.com/skattedatenmin. Or write to them. You must log in and send a message via altin.no or by post to Skatteetaten, P.O. Box 9200, Grønland 0134, Oslo, Norway. Yes, Mitch.
And there you have it, guys. To reiterate, we are the FHS. We are not from Skatteetaten. This program is part of the integration and voluntary activities of our organization. Our purpose is primarily aimed at Filipinos and other minority groups in Norway and Filipinos in the Philippines.
Yes, and for those who missed this live program, don't worry, you can watch it here in our official Facebook page at fhs.org.no or watch it in our YouTube channel, The Filipino Helping Society in Norway, and visit as well our website, www.fhsnorge.org, for more updates, other information drive, and to know more about our organization. You can register as a member and a volunteer for free through our website, and there are several benefits for all FHS members and volunteers. Again, visit our website at www.fhsnorge.org. Christine?
Thank you, Kate. And we would also like to invite everyone to tune in to our digital radio program from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. on our Radio Inter FM 105.8 every Friday, which has its own live broadcast on our Facebook page. Tonight, FHS Newbie in Norway will be hosting for the said program. And lastly, on behalf of the Filipinski Alphasophone in Norge, I would like to thank first to the great people behind this who put a lot of effort on making this a program. Thank you, FHS Newbie in Norway team. And also, I would like to extend my thanks to Kate of Team Healthy and Dilvidihet for hosting with us tonight. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching the program. Again, this has been Christine, together with Mitch and Kate. We would wishing everyone a lovely evening. Tack för oss och gå hög allesammans.
God helg!
God helg,
God
allesammans!
helg!